One time I had to babysit one of my neighbor's kids overnight. We're gonna call the kid Benny. The parents didn't really tell me anything when they left me alone with Benny, but they left me a note and they were like, you can only open it in emergencies. So at this point, I'm alone with Benny. It's like 11 p.m. and I told Benny, I was like, dude, you should like get to bed. It's late. Then Benny starts getting really red and he's like, no, we don't want to sleep alone. Sleep with us, please. I didn't know why Benny said us, but I was like, whatever, okay, like, yeah, I'll sleep in your room, like, it's fine. So fast forward a couple hours, it's like 3 in the morning at this point. This is the best part.
Benny starts talking in his sleep and he's like, take her instead. You're not my friend anymore. I am not yours.
And I try waking him up and I look at him and his eyes are wide open as he says this stuff. I was freaking out, so I went to go open the note that his parents said was only for emergencies. It just gets better.
The note said,
we're sorry for not telling you. Run him a cold bath. Call 911 in case anything. So after Benny was literally acting possessed while I was sleeping in his room, I went to go open the note that his parents left that was only for emergencies.
And guess what it said?
The note literally said, sorry for not telling you. Run him a cold bath and call 911 if anything happens.
I didn't know what to do, so I just went to go wake up Benny.
So when I woke Benny up, he was really, really mad. And he kept trying to put his hands in front of my eyes and was telling me, please be nice to them. Open up. And so long story short, I ran Benny a cold bath and then he locked himself in the bathroom. So at this point, Benny has literally locked himself in the bathroom and he's literally yelling out loud, please take her, not me. I won't tell anyone.
This is the best part.
So I called the police because I was scared for my life at this point. And the note that his parents left said to do that. So the cops tried calling Benny's parents, but they couldn't get a hold of them, but they got a hold of the grandparents. And eventually his grandparents came. So his grandparents come and they're like, we're gonna take him to a priest. And they told me to...
Story time, Tinder edition. Okay, the story blew up on Twitter like a while ago, but I'm just gonna retell it because it's very informational. So there was this guy and this girl, and they met through Tinder, and then they met up and they went on a date. And they were out at dinner, and then she starts not feeling so well. And then she says, I really need to go home. And he says, yeah, I'll drive you home. And she says, okay. So then they get to her house, and then she starts feeling better. So then she says, do you want to come in for some coffee? And then he says, yeah, sure. So they go inside, they have their coffee, and then she doesn't feel well again. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel well again. I think you really need to leave. And he's like, okay. And he leaves. And then she goes to bed, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up, and she hears this noise down in her kitchen. And so she locks her door, and she calls the cop. And the 911 operator is just on the other line saying, can you just stay on the line until the cops get there? And then the cops get there, and they're like, the door is locked. Like, we don't think anyone's inside. And she's like, I promise you, someone's inside my house. I can hear them. She says, you have my permission to break down the door. So she's still up in her room, and then she hears the cops break down the door. And then she hears some rustling and some fighting. Part 2 of the Tinder story. So then after the cops break down the door, they go upstairs and they knock on her door and they're like, it's okay, we've got the guy, everything's fine. And they say to her, we don't really want you to stay here tonight. We don't think that you should see what he's done. And when I say he, it's the guy that she went on a date with. And she's like, no, I need to see what he's done. So she goes downstairs and she sees her kitchen wrapped all in plastic. And there's a saw and a hammer and a knife. And earlier when he came into her house for coffee, he set his keys down right next to her keys. And so when he left, he picked up both sets of keys. And that is how he got back into her house. And they tested her, like her blood and everything, and she wasn't supposed to wake up because of how many drugs were in her system, because on the date he drugged her. And then I guess he was just planning on chopping up her body in her own kitchen. I don't know. Stay safe.
I had a good group of friends, but at the time, my group of friends started getting pretty toxic. Everyone would just pretty much talk about each other. And then the next day when we would all see each other, it would be like nothing ever happened. There was this one guy, his name was James. He was a football player. He was pretty cute. Most girls were pretty attracted to him, but he was one of my really good friends at the time. And one of my friends in the group, let's call her Lucy, I guess she had a really, really big crush on him, but I had no idea at the time. One day at lunch, James sent me a funny meme on Snapchat, and I said, oh my gosh, you guys, look, this is so funny. And I could see like Lucy, she was so mad, I could just tell, and I was just really confused why. And basically all my friends took sign language. And I was the only one in my group that took Spanish. So Lucy started signing. She was just signing like crazy, and I can tell she was really mad. And one of the girls in the group who I was closest to, we'll call her Lily, I leaned over and I was like, Lily, like, what is she saying? closest to, we'll call her Lily. I leaned over and I was like, Lily, like, what is she saying? Lily told me everything that she was saying, how I was trying to steal James from her and how I'm doing this on purpose, even though I had no idea at the time that Lucy did have a crush on him. And that night I was doing a Spanish presentation, so that's all I was focused on. And I get a text message from my friend. And she says, are you okay? Like, do you know what's happening? I text her back. I'm like, what's happening? And she ends up FaceTiming me about 5 minutes later. And she says, do you know, like, why am I in this chat? I was like, what chat? And she sends me a bunch of screenshots and the chat is called We Hate Taya. And I was just speechless. And I looked through it and she added all these random people that weren't even in our friend group. It was just a bunch of messages about me and really, really hateful messages and how I'm just trying to steal James and how I'm annoying and all this other stuff. I just feel sick to my stomach. I remember just sitting there and I start screaming in the bathroom and I ended up throwing up. My mom runs upstairs and I just told her what happened. I'm crying hysterically. I was mentally just broken down. It was really bad. The next day, I felt pretty worthless, honestly. Like, I felt like I lost all my friends. Only one girl from the group stood by me. I'm a senior now, and Lucy's actually in my English class, but we're just acquaintances. I do forgive her, but I'll never forget what she did, and it'll always be there. And I'm on dance team now this year, and I have better friends now. So, lesson is, if you are in a group with friends and it's just getting really toxic, I suggest to just find better friends because in the end, it's not worth it because you will be dragged down with the negativity and the toxic energy that they bring.
One.